right, guys, I think you saw me unload that. That thing is heavy. You would not have done that without a ballast. So be forewarned, if you are going to unload that thing, get a ballast. I didn't even really want to lift it up very high in the trailer. Luckily, I didn't need to. I could just get a little bit and then pull it out. But got to get back to work. And then tonight, we're going to get this thing unboxed and start putting her together. All right, let's get this thing out of the box. Looks like the packing list has a thank you note attached. That's kind of cool. So I'll walk you through my process of putting this together. I just took this hardware box out of the chute, and I think what I'm going to have to do next is, once I get into some of these instructions, I think I'm going to have to put a pin in that top part there and lift this up so I can get the crate out from underneath of it. So my first observation is this is extremely well packaged, nice metal, heavy duty crate, and no damage to it. And this was what was in that box. Here's a package of hardware and possibly the world's most comprehensive set of instructions I've ever seen. So we're gonna go through it. All right, these bolts are 17 millimeter. Unpacking this here, just unwrap the bubble wrap. Yeah, a little sign, looks like that's probably the primer underneath, so we're missing some orange paint and a little bit of an issue there, so we'll request some touch-up paint from them. Other than that, so far everything looks to be well painted. Okay guys, I think I'm gonna avert a trip to the store. So one thing you need to lift this from the balance point is you need a pin to go between here and here. This is about 6 inches though. You're going to need at least a 6-inch pin. It's about 5 inches in there. Let me see what it is for you guys. Yeah, point to point, it's 4 3/4. So get yourself about a 6-inch pin. Minimum probably is about what you want to go all the way through there. I don't have one that big, and none of my 3-point pins are that large, so I'm going to go ahead and use 2 of my clevises on there. In fact, this clevis has too big of a bolt to even go through that hole, so I put a trailer pin through it. So I'm going to hook my rope up to each one of these clevises to lift it. the chute out of the way. Now, I hope I got enough to clear the legs. I don't know that I do yet. I hate to have to lift it more, but let's see what we got here. Here's one. Let's get that in there. We're going to go with that height for a minute to see if I can swing out the other side enough. Hey, I missed a step. When I had it up in the air with the straps, I was supposed to put these little ski feet on it. So I went ahead and I had already undone my forks and everything and took off my ballast. So I just lifted it up with the 3-point, hooked it up with that real quick. You can see this thing was in here the other way. And this pin here was attached to this pin. I was curious what this was at first. I forgot it was the 3-point extension. I didn't know why we had an extra pin there, but it was for this. So got that hooked up. You can see right now it's kind of crooked because I actually have an issue right now with this stabilizer arms jacked up. I need to straighten it out. So with that bent, it's a little bit angled right now, but I do have it hooked up on the 3-point, lifted her up. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that other ski on there, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay guys, a little update, going very slowly here. I went ahead and took apart my stabilizer arm. I showed you earlier how it was bent, and I didn't want to try to adjust this thing with that bent. So I took it out, put it in the vise, straightened that out. And then I put her back on. I got these feet set at the lowest setting I can go. And that's where I need to be. So this will be helpful for you guys if you guys are on like LX 2610, LX 3310, probably B2650, because what you need to do for the height of this thing is it says that you want the spline on the chipper to be slightly below the spline on the tractor. And I believe the spline on my tractor was like 21 inches from the ground to the top of it. And then over here, I think I was at 20 inches to the top of this spline, or to the bottom of this spline. So slightly lower. And when I was at the second setting with the legs to start with, that was too high. That was above that. So for this tractor, you're going to need to be at the lowest setting. And then I also, what's cool here too is they have adjustments here for the 3-point. So I ended up going with just one hole exposed, and then I don't have to completely max out my link. It's still pretty maxed out on the top link, but that was better than it would have been if I was all the way back in. So that's pretty cool how they add that adjustability there. And then the adjustability up here. This just has one hole in it, but you had the ability to turn it upside down or whatever, but this is where that's at. So now I have the feet all tightened up, and I have the top all set. Everything is pretty level. So I'm going to go ahead with the rest of the installation. Okay, first left side panel installed. You put this plate on as like so, put the adjustable size here, then you can have this tight and kind of move the panel till it lines up on the top and the bottom, and then just tighten those up really good. And that's the left side panel. Both of these take 17mm wrenches. Here you can see the inside of that one that we just showed you. So we got the washer on this side. On this side, on the right side, I'm going ahead and putting these on first and get them mostly tension, because it was kind of hard on the first one. I was trying to hold too many moving pieces at once. So these are pretty firm there right now. Now I'll bring up the other panel. Much easier this way. This is going to be one of those things in the future I plan to check often. Even though they're nylocks, there's a lot of vibration with this machine. The last thing we want is one of those to come off inside the chipper. Okay, there's this side. Okay, we're on to step 9, which is to install the bottom panel. And we just want to hook it in here with these 2 bolts and let it hang, it says. I'm out of washers, so this doesn't really call for washers. It said they provided 8 washers, and I've already used 8 of them. So not sure why they don't want washers here, but they don't have them. Or raise it up, raise the lower panel up, and use this last hole. Okay, now we'll install the rest of the bolts. Okay, that's it for that step. Now we're on to step 11. And it says before we tighten the bolts, we need to ensure that the lower panel is slightly higher than the infeed bin. That way nothing will hang up when the two pieces come together. So I'll start to firm these up a little bit. Okay, I have everything snugged up a little bit, but as you can see there's a gap. So now that I have it a little closer, I'm going to try to make this adjustment. Okay, I got another tip for you guys. You know, you're supposed to keep this bottom panel loose so you can make sure that this is raised above here so everything just slides in. I have everything loose right now, but even when I push it all the way up, it's still not enough to clear that. And what I did is I had these about perfect, you know. So I think what I'm going to have to do is loosen these up a bit again and adjust this so it can be just a little bit higher, which will allow that bottom table to come up some more. So I guess I'm going to have to loosen those up a bit. All right, guys, I got it all tightened up. I spent a lot of time on that adjustment right after I said how well everything fits, which it does, but they had told you to go ahead and tighten these side panels down before you do the bottom, and you know, it's just common sense that it seemed like they should have been flush, so that's the way I had them. And then I tightened them down, and then as you saw, I couldn't get the bottom adjusted so the stuff would flow nicely over it without raising the entire thing up. So once I did that, now you can see I got a nice little lip here the whole way, so everything just slides over it. So don't get too crazy tightening up the sides until you get that adjustment. Okay, the next step was to install this support leg. It was just this plate, bolt, washer, and then washer again on the back side with washer again on the back side with the plate. This is only to be used when it's in storage, not when it's hooked to the tractor. So this was very tough to get. You're obviously supposed to probably use a screwdriver or something to, you know, open it up and close it. But even the first time, it was hardly wanting to turn. So I threw a little silicone in there, and that freed it up a little bit. Okay, I'm calling it a night for tonight. I am tired. I'm going to move the tractor back into the back of the garage, and then we'll finish up the installation tomorrow. Okay, next step, back at it. Just installing this top panel. Just takes 4 of the bolts on each side. Looks like those are my last 4 of this size. And I got 4 nuts, so that's good. It did say in the manual to run these bolts either direction. They kind of suggested you run them to the inside, but I can see an advantage and disadvantage either way. Sometimes you might get some brush caught on the inside, but I think I'd almost rather have them on the inside because I can see myself constantly catching a pant or something else if they were going to the outside. Okay, next step is the upper feed roller assist. So takes 4 bolts. These ones already came in the unit, so that's nice. I didn't have to go looking for them. So we'll get these taken out. Take these out before I lose them where I don't want to. I guess a tip for this would be to do the rear ones first and then start the front ones. I think these ones would have been especially good to thread the other way now that I'm done, because that way you could at least keep an eye on the threads. Oh, this one's nicer to tighten. Okay, next step is we're putting on this safety bar. And the first thing you had to do is remove the bolt that's already in it on the right side. Then you remove the nut from this top bolt here. So I did that, put this left side through. I did have to stretch it a little bit to get it around the chute. Yeah, the instructions do call for this nut to be installed on the outside and then the nut on the inside. So as you can see, it's very tight. I don't know if this got bent in transit or what, but I may have to bend this out a little bit more before I can attempt to do that. Let me get a bar. I'll try to bend it here instead of somewhere else. That probably gave us enough. And this takes the, I don't remember what size this one was, one of the Allens. That's probably a little tight. Huh? All right, step 19. We got to adjust this cable and hook it to that rod up here. That we need to adjust the cable so that it's tight, but it doesn't engage the clutch. So there, the clutch is engaged. There, I guess it's not. So I mean, I think right out of the gate, it's pretty good right there. Just tighten that up for now. I did want to mention a misstep the other night was this thing was connected, this L bracket here was connected to the clutch cable I wasn't really sure where it went. I just thought this kind of hung out here. I don't know why, but it's basically the stop for here. So that makes sense. Sometimes the obvious things elude me. So, okay, time for the discharge chute. I just realized into this project that on most of the bin, I forgot to put washers. You know, you just read the instructions. It says grab the bolt and everything, and obviously you need a nut. It doesn't tell you that. Well, obviously I just found a whole bag of washers, and I'm like, oh man. So I don't know how critical the washers really are on the other side of the nylock, but who knows, maybe I'll get ambitious and go back in and put the washers in. I just hate to. I got everything torqued already. So don't forget the washers on each side of your nut and bolt. Here's another example here. They just give you this bag just had the lock washer and the bolt together, but they didn't have the washers in it. That was in a whole other bag. So I'm still going to put a washer on there, but it didn't call for one. So I guess we just have to remember that kind of stuff. Looks like I must have forgot a lock washer on one of these because I have an extra one in my hand. All right. Yeah, you just raise up here and twist pretty nice. Last time I had a chute like that, I had a snowblower. Sure, I'm glad I don't have that anymore. Okay, now we're over at the Pto Shaft. One of the things the instructions said to do was to check to make sure that the zerks were tight, because sometimes some paint from the factory got in the way. I was able to turn each one of these at least a good half turn to tighten it up with an 11mm wrench. So got that done. I'm going to go ahead and throw some grease in there. And I wanted to show you guys this. I'll put a link to this in the description, but this thing's a game changer. If you don't have one of these, got it a few months ago. It's a lock and lube adapter. Before, and I'll show you, it's got these jaws that come out to really grab on to the fitting to make sure it takes grease. Before that, I had just a terrible end on mine that was wore out, and you'd get it on the fitting, and then half the time you'd almost be ripping the zerk out trying to get the thing back off. So this one you just press in to release the jaws and put it on, and the same way to get it off. So let's see what kind of grease we can get going in this thing. All right, got about 10 pumps in there. I guess it didn't need quite that much. It's coming right out of the zerk. I didn't see any coming out anywhere else. Must be pretty sealed up in there. Let's see what happens on the other side. One of these looked like it had some grease in it. Maybe it was that one, but I'm just gonna put some more in to make sure. Okay guys, so we're back at the tractor, and I'll show you what I've done so far. The instructions are, I'm gonna have to cut this shaft. So the instructions are to go ahead and put the shaft on the tractor and put the shaft on the implement. Obviously, make sure that the coupler is on there and you can't pull it off. And then what you're supposed to do, and again, bungee ties to the rescue. Again, my favorite thing. Another plug for awesomeness. We'll put a link to those in the description. But what you do is you're supposed to come to this edge here, okay, on each side of the shaft, and then you're supposed to come in 1 inch and then make a mark on the opposing shaft. But you got to do that when they're, when they're kind of parallel to each other. So I did that, and what I found, what was really awesome, is instead of a measuring tape, this my slide rule thing here actually has, this is actually 1 inch wide. So I just put it right up to here, okay, on this one, right up to the edge, and then I made my red mark on the opposing shaft. And I did the same thing over here on this one. You can see my mark there. So we come over here, make our mark, or line it up, and there's our red mark right there. So we'll go back to the bench. I think we have to take one more measurement before we determine where we have to cut it. Okay, so here we are. We have the inner shaft and the outer shaft. And then what we have to do is, it says we need to cut to the mark for the outside, and then take this same amount and we have to cut the shaft that same amount. So we'll cut to the mark, take that same amount, cut the shaft. So this particular one's 1 3/4 inches that we're going to cut off, and we'll cut off 1 3/4 inches from the inner part. Measure twice, cut once. All right, so there's where we cut off. Let's go have a moment of truth. If we get this right, we might be able to have a beer. Okay guys, I finally got the shaft on after a lot of sweating, a little hooting and hollering. So I didn't end up shortening it again. I didn't have to. Again, I forgot about the adjustment here. So yesterday when I set it up, I had one hole showing. Now I have two holes showing, and I still had enough. It's really extended, but I still had enough here at the moment to make the trip back there. So I got it on. It was just such a pain to get on there and get those splines lined up. It was next to impossible. So I ended up hooking it up to the tractor first and then going back here, and I was able to get it. I'm still undecided whether I want to put this thing right here on here, this big old piece of plastic shield. I don't know that that's going to accomplish anything, and I think it's just going to be more in my way right there. I don't know. Probably keep out rain and debris a little better, so I'll have to think about that. But other than that, I got it on there. So I don't know. I guess now I'm gonna lift it up. Again, I've spent a good part of this evening screwing around with different things and shortening this. So again, another dark evening. So I think I'll lift this up a little bit, check the angle of everything, make sure we're still looking good. Another tip for you guys, I said earlier this was my first PTO implement. Don't forget that this thing, you know, rotates up and out of your way a little bit. So that helps, moving that up there. Other than that, I'm just going to go through the whole thing again and make sure everything's tightened and torqued before I go ahead and fire this thing up. I'll probably do a completely separate video of my first time chipping, because this video is going to be really long as it is on the install. Alright guys, the weekend has rolled around. It's been beautiful all week, and of course now it's raining like crazy today. So I'm just finishing one last go around of this machine. I'm tightening up. You're just checking tightness on all the bolts, and I have noticed that some of the grease fittings feel like they could be a little bit tighter, so I've brought those in. And I just took the cover off of this because I wanted to check the grease fittings in the shaft bearings here, and I couldn't get to those without taking this cover off here that's held on by 4 wing nuts. I had also attempted to put that PTO boot on there, and that was really difficult. So I figured, well, while I have it off, I'll just install the PTO boot on now, put it back on. I still may regret putting that on there and end up taking it back off, because it's still kind of tight in here between the PTO, and that just may get in my way more than it helps. But we'll put it on and see how that works. So let me show you. You have the bearing here on the shaft. And then, of course, you get 2 bearings on the lower shaft here. The other side, you got the same thing back down here. And then you have, here's the upper infeed, and here's the lower infeed roller. So there's, you know, bearings on both of those. And on the other side, and these come with caps on them. So I've removed the caps that sit on there. So this is the bottom one and the top one on this side. So those are pretty much the greasable areas. Now, it does say in the manual that these come factory greased to 33%, and that's the optimal amount of grease that should be in these until 500 hours. So it's a little freaky because, of course, I see 0 sign of grease. So I either have to put some in there, which I probably won't do. I'm just going to trust what the manual says, that they're already factory grease. But, you know, it seems like you'd see a little bit of leftover residual somewhere, but of course you don't. So that's that. One positive thing, these drive belts, I think I read in the manual or online that, you know, if you throw one of these on the weekend, or you know, they said you can get these at any auto parts store, which are really nice. So it looks like there's, what, 5 belts put together here to make up that drive. So, okay, I'm gonna attempt to put this PTO cover boot on there, and then we'll put this back on, see if it all goes back together, and will be complete. Guys, I found that these Irwin pliers with this open jaw, this kind of channel lock design with the open jaw, they're pretty amazing. And what's nice about them is that opening there accommodates the bolt, and then it's just a easy turn. So those work better than just trying to screw around with a regular pliers or a needle nose that don't work at all, or they work, but then you sliding off, marring up your work. Plus they get into these nice angles. So I put that cover back on, as you saw, and then tried the Pto Shaft again, and I just gave up on that cover. I even tried to slice it back just to give myself a little more leeway, but I'm tight enough with my settings here that that cover just hurts more than it helps. I also have a tip that seemed to finally work for me. I've struggled to try to get this on and off a few times, but what seems to work best for me is if I start at the chipper end and maybe not even lock it into place. Before it's locked into place, you can go back a little bit further on the shaft, and then I take it over to the tractor end. And I found that the other day I couldn't do this, but today, excuse me, I found that if the spline was just a little bit off, I was able to get enough leverage on this side that I was able to turn the flywheel a little bit to actually get it moved. The other day I couldn't seem to move the flywheel, and I just think it was the way I was trying to go about it. So, okay. And also, I just unhook the top link so I can have more access to that thing. So it's a real pain when that's in your way. So we'll put that back on. Okay guys, well this certainly has been a process putting this thing together, and more so because you wanted to double check everything, but I appreciate you coming along with me on it. I hope that I did some things that were helpful to you. Maybe you saw some mistakes I made that could save you some time, but I appreciate you tuning in and watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Hey guys, Tennessee Yankee. Thanks for watching. If you found this content helpful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button on your right. I have other content linked for you on the left side. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching.